Welcome to the Charismatic Cheetah podcast, exploring all things supernatural biblically. If you're new here, please like, subs, all that good stuff, comment, share this video, like it. Today we're going to be talking about how old the Earth is. Is it a young Earth? Is it an old Earth? Is the universe billions of years old? Is the Earth billions of years old? Or is it, like it says in Genesis, is 6 literal days of creation? Today we're going to be talking about with my good friend Ian Juby. But first, if you want, there'll be a link in the description if you want to support me on Patreon or if you want to join the Discord and all that good stuff. So, Ian, glad to have you back, man. I'm glad. Actually, I think this is the first time you've been on my show. It is the first time you've been on my show.
Yeah, this is the first time. I got to talk to my manager about this. How did I wind up on the Cheetah cast? Oh well. Anyway, but oh yeah, I'm the manager. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you made that decision, buddy. I'm sorry.
We'll be trying for a year, so I mean, hey, good to be here.
Yay, we're here. So, well, I mean, actually, I mean, so the first, I don't know, somehow you were, I think is when we did the "Can Christians be demonized" conversation we had.
Mhm.
I think that was a big, I don't know, it was like a big, I was like, oh, okay, this is how the podcasting stuff works. I don't remember exactly how it played out. I think you put me on the StreamYard and stuff like that, and I was like, oh, I can do this stuff. You know what I mean? Like I can have
Right,
guests
right.
on. It's not that hard. And so I appreciate that. And of course, we've been friends, and you make some pretty funny memes. And of course, the meme stash every Monday.
Yeah.
But for people who don't know who you are, tell us about, like, who you are and what you do, man.
Oh boy, that list is getting longer and more complicated too.
Seriously,
But
good
yeah,
grief.
and some of that I can't talk about yet. Um,
That's awesome.
but yeah, so I've been specifically with creation research. I got my first kick of the cat actually starting down in Texas. I
Nice.
was at Last Days Ministries with which Keith and Melody Green started up over there in Lindale, well, Garden Valley technically, um, and wound up down there in 1990. And while I was there, one of the other guys, because I've been involved in science education since I was 16 years old, um, working here at it was, so far as we know, it was the world's first science camp. It was a summer camp, but it was a science camp. And I worked there for 24 of the 26 years that it ran.
Oh,
I
wow.
was their right hand man, and I started when I was 16, and we literally were world renowned for what we did. We had kids from all over the world, Lebanon, England. I mean, you name it, we had kids coming. Um, so because I was like the science guy, right? I was one of the science guys. Um, when I was there at Last Days, um, Tim, one of my classmates, he mentioned this video series that they had filmed at Last Days, and it was Last Days Ministries had a full television recording studio, 3 camera, live edits, everything. They had the whole 9 yards, and they had this guy by the name of Dr. Carl Baugh come in, and the guy did a 6.5 hour lecture off the top of his head,
Oh, wow.
and I had I had heard of this stuff before, but most of this stuff I'd never heard someone draw these to the conclusions that they go to at the time, and I was just floored. And so I'm like, I find out he's in Glenrose. I'm like, so we did a field trip down to Glenrose, and it was only like a 3 hour drive or something. And then I wrote to him, to Dr. Baugh, and just asked if I could come volunteer at the museum for a couple of weeks after school, before I head back to Canada, because we had to do our outreach and whatnot. Um, we wound up in Russia, of all places, 3 weeks after the government collapsed. We even
Oh,
beat the
wow.
Mormons in there.
Wow. That's
Um,
crazy.
talk about divine intervention. And we were over there for 5 weeks, I think. So anyway, when I got back, he had written back and like, yes, please, they were going to have their first annual creation fair, and it had 5,500 people go through that weekend. I think it was the first ever creation fair they held, and so I slept in a tent in the back and behind the building and for 2 weeks, and it was awesome because you have scientists and engineers from around the world uh, just wandering in and out, and you just sit there and soak up information. It was awesome. I loved it.
That is cool. Yeah.
um, and then I wound up, 4 years later, when I was back in Canada, I wound up unexpectedly with a teaching job in a high school here in Ontario. I wasn't looking for a job. I wasn't looking for this job. And through the science camp, I wound up there, and I wound up teaching there for 10 years. And
Wow.
my first year there, I got invited into a class to be a guest speaker on the creation evolution topic. And that was my first ever public creation talk, was in a public high school, basically. And I would go on to do that many, many times over the years. I always tell people the Lord sent me to school to learn how to teach, basically.
Yeah.
Um, and it was an excellent education. So anyway, that was back in '94. Um, and so I've wound up, Texas is practically my second home. Even though last time I was just down there, uh, was that January? No, that was March. When was the eclipse?
May of 2024. May
Yeah, it
April of
was last
24.
year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why does it feel like it was this year, like yesterday?
Because time flies. I don't
Oh,
know.
anyway, yeah. So, yeah. So I mean, Glen Rose was practically a second home for me, because I went into full time creation ministry for 10 years, and did a lot of speaking tours in the U.S. over those 10 years, mostly living in my van while I was on the road. And Glen Rose would more or less be my home base. So done a lot of
That's
research
awesome.
there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Dude, that's awesome, man. Like, so no matter where someone lands, someone who's looking into creation science, no matter where they land on the spectrum of young Earth or old Earth, I still have a lot of respect for them. I have a lot of appreciation for guys like you, guys and girls like you who are studying science and trying to relate it to God. Because that's, I mean, the original point of science was to basically bring God glory. And let's, okay, God is an ordered God. He created an ordered universe so we can study his laws of nature and we can find out more about God.
Hmm.
And so I really appreciate that. Even the theistic evolution people, I can kind of respect, I guess, a little bit, not a whole lot, but a little bit. I'm joking, but I don't really like theistic evolution very much at all. But I still, at least they're trying to like bring science and God into the same conversation, you know?
Yep.
And so I can really appreciate that. So today I want to talk about the age of the Earth.
Sure.
Now, this is something that I've been kind of on and off studying for a long time since I was when I became a Christian when I was 19, and I've kind of always leaned, I think, older. Well, okay, let me put it this way. So when I was early 20s, first became a Christian, I didn't think it was allowed to be an old Earth creationist and still be a Christian, because I automatically
Mm.
thought, well, if you're old Earth, then you automatically think that the Bible's wrong or something like that. And I believe in the inerrancy of Scripture, and so I didn't think it was allowed. Well, 4 years ago or so, 3 or 4 years ago, I started looking into the subject again, and I found out that there's actually a really awesome old Earth community, and most of them actually aren't theistic evolutionists. I looked into that, couldn't get down with that, and I saw the evidence. Like Hugh Ross was a big influence on that, and I'm still undecided. I was a couple years ago, I would have said I'm definitely old Earth, but now I've kind of, I don't know, I'm still undecided. I lean old Earth because I've like the scientific evidence, and I've studied I forget the other guy's name. I have his books up on this bookshelf somewhere, but he talks about the theology of Genesis and stuff like that and religion. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So you can believe the Bible is inerrant and still believe in old Earth. Okay, cool. So I lean that direction, but I'm totally open to being wrong about that. So, and you're obviously a young Earther. And I definitely can get down with that. So I definitely want to have this conversation. I've been wanting to have this conversation for about a year now, like you said. So, so I guess I don't really want to dive necessarily into the biblical evidence because I think we all already know that. We already know Genesis says, 6 days, literal days of creation. That's what most, young earthers would say. And I could pretty much get down with that too. The part that gets me the most with my old earth leanings is the sunset and the sunrise every single day in the 6 days of the creation story. That's the one thing that people have asked Hugh Ross from YouTube videos and stuff that I've watched, and he never answers it. He kind of skirts around the question, which I probably would too if I were him. Not gonna lie.
Right.
So I guess let's dive into like what's the scientific evidence that there were 6 literal days of creation? Like God created everything. Now let me start here. Is the universe a young universe, or is it just the Earth that's young in your view?
Okay, that is actually that's a very good question, and it's a loaded one. Um, let me hop on Wikipedia real quick. I'm going to see what the latest numbers are, and age of the universe. So currently, the age of the universe is estimated to be 13.79 billion years. That's what they're saying right now. Depends on who you ask. That number changes. That's why I looked it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so, but we've got a problem. So when you take a look at the uh, size of the visible universe, you immediately run into the problem. Again, I'm just looking on Google here. It's saying approximately 93 billion light years. That's actually quite a
Oh
bit
yeah.
bigger than what I read just a couple of days ago when I looked this up, actually. So, but who knows where these numbers are coming from, right? So,
Yeah, right.
um,
Yeah.
but let's go with their numbers. Let's just assume their numbers are correct. All right. It's pretty much fact you can't travel faster than the speed of light. At least nobody's going to claim that the all the matter in the universe traveled faster than the speed of light, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it has to go 93 billion light years. All that matter, all that energy, all that light has to travel 93 billion light years. So how long does it take traveling at the speed of light for all that matter and light and energy to get out there?
Yeah. 93 billion years.
93 billion years. But
Yeah.
yet you take a look on the other page, and what did they say the last number was? They
13.8
claim,
billion.
yeah, just shy of 13.8 billion. So you've got, no matter whether you believe in an old Earth or a young Earth, you've got the same problem. Because even young Earth creationists will probably agree with that 90 billion light year figure. So you've got a problem. You've got an energy problem. You can't get the matter and energy and everything spread out in the supposed age of the universe, no matter what you believe. So this is where Einstein's relativity theory comes in. And this is where it gets really weird because I would contend time itself is a creation. And so we're stuck in time. We're four dimensional human beings, right? And we have no control over that fourth dimension. We're stuck in that dimension. This, the Starship launch is coming up, and we're stuck on that time, Um, but you may already be familiar with this, but GPS satellites, for example, they have a nuclear clock on board, and they have to keep very, very specific time on those satellites. The problem is they have to run the clocks slower than the clocks on Earth. And the reason for that is because they're at the altitude that they're in a weaker part of the gravitational field of Earth. and gravity varies time. And so if you have an increase in gravity, time slows down. So for instance, the Voyager spacecraft, it's way out there, and it really is not in any gravitational fields. So its clocks are now running way faster than the clocks that are on Earth that it left. Um, and so when you get stars or whatnot way out in the outer reaches of the universe, where the gravitational strength is way weaker or virtually non-existent, then their clocks are running really, really, really fast. So this is also a good explanation as to why we see stars that, again, even the evolutionists would say are older. They appear older than the age of the universe that they claim. So everybody's got the same problem, you know. Um, it's kind of a fascinating topic because this was actually my anti-gravity research that I was doing, 4 years ago, and I'm still doing. But it's what we're working on is not really anti-gravity. I don't think anyway. Uh, it might be hard to say. There's still a lot of questions that sprung up out of the experiments that I still have no answer for. But that was one of the things I was checking is, okay, if I'm generating a gravity field, then am I affecting time? And so I would do experiments where I had my gravity generator sitting on the table and I put a stopwatch right in the gravity field and put a control over on the far side of the room and see if there was any variations in time. And this was kind of a poor man's gravity detector, right? Because how do you even detect gravity? It was a difficult thing to measure and to account for and whatnot. So anyway, that all ties in with this. So
Okay. So I guess maybe short answer, you believe that both the universe is young, same age as the Earth at least, and but time is weird and does weird stuff.
yes, because there's parts of the universe that could be older than Earth
Gotcha.
because the
Okay.
time
Right.
there is way faster than it is here. So
Okay. Cool.
I,
Yeah,
I
that makes
never
sense.
did I never did make it through that whole movie, Interstellar.
Oh yeah. Oh, great movie.
So they explored that concept in the movie. Like that much I know. I did see that much. I really should watch that movie because it looks like it was really good.
You would love it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I only made it about halfway through, and I'm like, I gotta go to bed, and then I never watched the rest. Mhm.
So okay, so that makes sense because I guess the biggest that was probably the main thing that got me to lean more old Earth, or at least to like be open to it, I suppose,
Mhm.
is the stars are when we look out into the universe, we see these galaxies that are hundreds of thousands, millions, even billions of light years out in space, and how the light couldn't have traveled there without the appropriate amount of time. So maybe somebody could say old universe, young Earth. Genesis 1:1 is different than Genesis 1:2 if I'm getting the verses right there in my head. But I've always wondered something. This is something I've always thought about is okay, so from what I understand, if you travel the speed of light, then time basically essentially stops if I think if I'm remembering correctly. Like if you're traveling the speed of light, it does really weird thing. That's why you can't actually travel the speed of light because once you got up to that speed, like time like stops and does a bunch of weird stuff, kind of like how it does at a black hole. And I've always wondered, like, okay, well, if if I've traveled the speed of light and it affected time that much, then then maybe the light coming off the sun is is like the light is actually it's getting affected by its own speed, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Right, right. Yeah, I see what you're getting at.
I've
Yeah, yeah. And there
always
was,
wondered that.
yeah, and there was some. Oh man, this was decades ago. I don't even remember the details because astronomy has never been my thing. Um, the but the owner of the science camp was telling me about it. Astronomy was his thing, uh, and he
Yeah.
was talking about a particle um, that had a lifespan, and as it was coming into the upper atmosphere, if I recall, it was approaching the speed of light, and its lifespan increased
Hmm.
because of that. It's approaching the speed of light. But again, this was
Wow.
35 years ago, and it was told to
Yeah.
me secondhand, and I'm like, oh, interesting. And then I wasn't paying that much attention. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's fine.
and
It's kind of a go
well,
ahead.
and it does get really weird because you've probably seen that where scientists have done some pretty astonishing experiments where they got light to slow down in various mediums really, really slow. So what is
Interesting.
happening to time and matter and energy in those mediums?
Yeah.
And that's just a question I've had. I've never even looked to see if it's been answered. you know, so
What do you think is the most compelling evidence for a young Earth? Like what is the thing that you're like, this is what for me does it, or maybe a couple things where you're like, this is
yeah,
definitely make this, this is what makes me go young Earth over against a lot of the secular and even Christian scientists that say that the Earth is old. Like, what do you think your best evidence is? Do you think?
there is a bunch that come to mind. One of the ones that seems a little off. It doesn't seem relevant to that, but it is actually right next door to you. The fossil human and dinosaur footprints together
Yeah,
in the Biloxi River.
yeah.
Even the evolutionists have said, not Niles Eldridge. What was his name? I've forgotten. He was the former president of the Society for Vertebrate Paleontology, and he basically said in print, if dinosaurs and humans lived together, it would mean three things. It would mean evolution has been falsified, the Earth is young, and the Genesis account of creation is correct. Now, he said that,
Wow.
and he's correct. I agree with him on that matter. Now, he went on to just poo poo the tracks and say, well, no. Um, but I am one of the guys who's done uh, some of the most research on those tracks on the planet. And I hang out with the guys who've done the most research. I've had the privilege of participating in a lot of that research firsthand, which includes a bunch of new techniques which had never been done before, such as using CT scans for, say, for instance, loose track fossils, um, because you can actually see if you can picture a footprint, dinosaur, human, whatever, um, as it steps into the mud, it changes the density of the mud around the track,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
It compresses it. And then that hardens into rock. So now we take that rock, throw it in a CT scanner, which is basically a three-dimensional X-ray. And X-rays are altered by density. So we can actually see the density variations surrounding the track, under the track, and it was there was a lot of surprises. Actually, there was a lot of learning that we did, and that was Dr. Ba who first did that, and we kind of just took it and ran with it. So, like, I've got, for instance, a trail of human footprints that I made in concrete in the backyard here, and I've cut them up, but I still haven't had them CT scanned. But that'll be like the what do you call it? The control uh,
Right. Yeah.
method, Um, so, for instance, with the Delk track, which is a very dramatic uh, human footprint, complete with all five toes, and there is no creature, fossil or living, which makes a footprint like a human's.
Okay.
Even apes, they basically have four hands. They don't have feet.
Right.
There is no creature other than a human that makes a human footprint. And
What
so
about
when you see,
Bigfoot?
well, yeah, maybe Bigfoot, but
Yeah,
but
it's a different
that's
subject.
debatable. Um, so when you see a track with the ball, the arch, the heel, all five toes, it's pretty simple. That's a
Yeah, it's
human
foot. Yeah,
footprint,
human
you
foot.
know.
Yeah.
And anyone who denies that you can identify a creature by its footprint, just go talk to an Indian tracker. For
Yeah.
that matter, go and talk to children. Even children with their limited life experience can identify a dog or a cat by its tracks, let
Right.
alone someone well versed in tracking. They can take a look at the track and not only tell you what creature made it, they can tell you what they were doing when they made the tracks, you know?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And we can see that in the human footprints in the Paluxy as well. And for the skeptics, um, these those who say that these are just carvings, which is absolute rubbish. Anyone who says that they haven't got the foggiest clue what they're talking about. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
you are absolutely clueless, because anybody can go and join the public excavations. They're in Glenrose. They're now taking control of the main excavation site, and so they run lots of excavations all throughout the year now. Um, but you can go participate in breaking up the rock that's on top of it, and it's anywhere from 8 to 16 inches of solid rock, solid limestone that has to be
Wow.
broken up and removed, exposing mostly dinosaur tracks. But in that one stretch, I counted it up, and in that one stretch from the McFall site down to the corner downstream, it's about a mile stretch, and there was well over 1,000 dinosaur tracks, and I counted over 100 human footprints over the
Oh,
years
wow.
that have been
Wow.
found in that one stretch. Um, and most of those, yeah, I think it's safe to say most of the human footprints were actually excavated from underneath solid rock. So these are not carvings. They cannot be. Um, so and you can follow the trails, right left pattern. It's a two-legged creature with footprints that look exactly like humans. So even if it is Bigfoot, the evolutionists themselves would admit that disproves evolutionary theory, even if it's Bigfoot.
Yeah. So, question on that real quick. So, how
Yep.
many years is this? I guess top layer, and also the layer that the actual prints are in. Like, what's the typical scientific consensus on how long it takes to form that type of rock? Do you know how long that takes?
Okay, there would be a lot.
According to them. According to them.
I'm not sure that you would actually get a consensus on that one, because for the layers themselves to form, um, they would probably say it was very fast. In fact, I know many would say it was very fast. Dr. Derek Ager, who is a vehement anti-creationist, he just loved to hate us, uh, and he was a PhD geologist, and he wrote his book and titled it "The New Catastrophism." And that layer with those tracks, they call it the Austin chalk there in Texas. They call it, you can find it all over the world. You can even find it over in Australia. It's called the Gingin chalk there. And that was the whole point of his book, was look at this massive layer that was caused and formed by a catastrophe. And so he did a lot of fancy tiptoe dancing around Noah's flood by saying it was a whole bunch of catastrophes,
Yeah.
and never once admitting that this was global, even though the emphasis of his book was these layers are global.
All over the
Um,
place.
yeah, so so you have even the most vehement evolutionary deep time anti-creationist skeptics who will tell you those layers formed fast. Now, they will say it happened 60, 70 million years ago,
Right.
but they will say it happened very fast. And there's a ton of evidence there too. I could point you to. Actually, you know what? You're not far away. If you ever get the chance,
Yeah. Glen Rose right down the
uh,
road.
as just as you cross the bridge, right beside Creation Evidence Museum, if you go downstream from there, the Paluxy River takes a left-hand turn. That whole embankment is plastered with fossil clams, and I'm sorry I don't have any here. I show you, um, but you've seen clams before, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think so.
Have you seen
One
dead
time.
clams?
Dead clams?
Yes.
Like I don't know.
Oh,
I think so. I don't know.
how would you know if they were dead?
I don't know. I don't know.
They fall open.
Okay, that makes sense.
So yeah, so when they die, now there's some clams they actually use their muscles to open the shell. Most of them use the muscles to hold the shell closed. So
Okay.
if you take a look there, you will find, oh my goodness, one survey I did the 1 year, I don't know, it was scores of them. The whole bank is just plastered with these fossil clams, and they're all buried alive in the closed position. And scientists have actually conducted cruel and unusual experiments with clams where they would rapidly bury them, and it was amazing how deep these clams could dig themselves out of, even after
Interesting.
being buried. If I recall, it was around 10 feet of dirt,
Wow.
and
That's a
they
lot.
simply ran out of oxygen by the time they got to that height. They could still keep going, but they ran out of oxygen and died.
Wow.
So, so that just gives you an idea of just uh, how catastrophic that deposit was. And if you head over to Mount Everest, which is why is Mount Everest famous?
Was this really tall?
Yes, the
Yeah.
highest known point on planet Earth.
Yeah.
So the top 3,000 feet of Mount Everest, if you look at photos of it, it's got a kind of a yellow buff to it. It's very similar to the color of the Austin chalks in some areas, actually. But it is the top 3,000 feet is covered in a layer that has copious amounts of fossilized clams buried alive in the closed position.
Interesting.
So, if the highest known point on planet Earth was clearly underwater, and even the evolutionists will agree with me on that one, and if you don't want to climb Mount Everest, no problem. Just remember what Derek Ager said, follow that layer. That layer is going to be found on probably every single continent. And sure as rain, you can take a drive on the highways near Mount Everest where those layers come down, and you can look on the rock cuts yourself and you can dig those fossils for yourself and see them for yourself. You don't have to risk your life to climb Mount Everest. So you can go and look at that layer. Now, the evolutionists will claim that yes, it was underwater, it was at the bottom of the ocean, and then the mountains rose up out of the ocean. Totally agree. 100% I agree with them. Here's the catch: every single mountain range on planet Earth was also underwater. So if every major mountain range on the planet has fossilized sea life on it, and according to what was their names, Ollier and Payne, they two evolutionary scholars, they wrote a book on mountain building, and they provided chapter after chapter after chapter after chapter of profound evidence showing that all the mountains rose up on the planet at the same time.
Interesting.
So now reverse that. And that's them saying it. So the evolutionists are saying this, not me. I'm just agreeing
Right.
with them,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
So if you take all the mountains on planet Earth and flatten them so they're all underwater, what do you have? You have a global flood.
Yeah.
There is no getting around it. So you can dance all you want, but these are the facts, and these are facts you can go and look up for yourself. And I encourage
So,
people to do that, actually.
no, for sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's get into. I guess we can talk about the
Mhm.
flood of Noah. I mean, I'm just gonna be completely honest. The Noah story has always bothered me.
Mhm.
It's, I mean, since I was first a Christian, even to this day, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to do with this story.
Mhm.
I believe it because it's in Bible. I believe it by faith, but my reason isn't necessarily behind it. So I mean, I've kind of taken the I believe it was Michael Heiser who went with the local flood theory,
Right.
and I was like, I can get down with that. The polar ice caps melted a few thousand years ago, and there was a lot of flooding and yada yada yada. And I was like, okay, I can get down with the local flood. You know what I mean? So my question has always been, so Noah grabs, one of each, male and female of each animal, and puts it on the ark, and then we know the rest of the story. The flood subside, and then him and eight people total are saved off the flood, and that creates all the animals that we have today, and then that also all the human beings. We're all related to Noah, just really distantly. So what do we do with like animals that I, how do we fit that many different types of species on even on a really large boat? Like how do you deal with that question of like how do we have so many different types of animals and species and all this different stuff,
Mhm.
but they all fit on one ark, a few thousand years ago?
Yeah, and that's a common question and a good one. In fact, John Wood Morphy wrote an entire book on that topic, and I love the way John thinks and writes. Oh my goodness, I just love the way he does. So he broke it down. And he said, "All right, we know this size of the ark based on the dimensions given to us in the Bible, and it worked out to oh boy, I'm getting rusty in my old age. You know what? I think it was 450 railroad boxcars in volume. Um, trying to remember now. Ye gods, this is embarrassing. I'm gonna have to look that up. At any rate, so what he did was he said, okay, he actually calculated because there's a whole idea of first of all the question of how many animals are we talking about here.
Yeah.
And so he went down the list. Okay, well, we no fish, no fishes. Majority of insects don't need to be on the ark; they can survive just fine in a flood. It's basically air breathing animals is mostly what he focused on, and a lot of those, like for instance, all uh, the dog like creatures they probably all came from one pair of wolf-like creatures. So, like you get, they would call this the evolutionists would call this evolution, and by
Right.
their loose terms, of course it is, yes. Um, but you have the wolf over thousands of years has evolved into the Chihuahua. Yes.
Yeah,
Uh,
I got
you
half
know,
chihuahuas.
yes.
They think they're wolves, but they're not.
And that's right. Um, so the bottom line is they all came from basically one pair. So you have this huge variety, especially with dogs, because humans have had their hand in that in dog
Yeah.
breeding, and it's unnatural selection. It's human selection. They're selecting it. So basically, what he argued was when you look at the kind of animal and how they diversified and afterwards, after they got off the ark. This is all very minor diversification. It's still a dog-like creature, even the
Right.
Chihuahua. You know, um, so it basically worked out to he came up with a figure of about 16,000 animals. The next question he asked was, okay, what's the average size of those animals? Because a lot of those animals are like the size of a mouse or a mole. And even the large dinosaurs are very rare. Most of the dinosaurs are like the size of a dog or even smaller. Um, but
Makes
we'll
sense.
come
Yeah.
back to that in a moment anyway. Um, so he worked it out to probably about the average size of a sheep. So he looked at that and said, okay, we got 450 boxcars worth of volume. We know how many sheep we can fit into a boxcar, railroad boxcar. And so anyway, if you check out the book, there was plenty of room in there for not just the animals, but food and water as well. Now, that's taking grown adults, which Noah probably did not do for several reasons. For the dinosaurs, for example, and I do this with the kids, I actually have a hadrosaur dinosaur skull. And I can't show you because it's too big for the screen, but it's
That's
probably
cool.
3.5 feet long, just the skull. And then
Wow.
I've got a hadrosaur dinosaur egg, which, boy, the guy at the Tucson Fossil Show had an entire table of them. And I was this broke creationist. Oh, do I ever regret not buying that entire table? Because that year, I think it was the year after that, China shut down all fossil exports. And
Oh
the
man.
price went through the roof. They're hard to get now. Um, so I love that dinosaur egg, and the kids love it too.
That's
But it's
cool.
very
Yeah.
simple. You show that dinosaur egg to kids and hold it up in front of the skull. This is the size, and it's only about this big. So they are born this big, and they grow into an adult that's like 30, 40 feet long. So the simple solution is you bring baby dinosaurs, bring youths, and there's several reasons for that. They tend to hibernate. They sleep a lot. They don't drink much. They don't eat much. They don't go to the bathroom much. That's important.
Yeah, it's very important. Yeah.
And
Another problem. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, and when they get off the ark, they have a full reproductive lifespan ahead of them. So there's and plus also, if you read the scriptures, you'll notice carefully, um, it was God who brought the animals. Noah didn't go looking for them. God
Oh
brought
yeah.
the animals to him.
Okay. Yeah.
So the Lord was the one who selected which animals to bring, not Noah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what do you do with the problem of the obvious, elephant in the room, so to speak, elephant in the ark, so to speak? But what do you do with like inbreeding, for example? With I mean, we know that even animals, obviously humans, when we inbreed with close relatives, and then we have deformities and stuff like that.
Yep.
So same thing with animals. I want to say it's less likely with animals, if I'm not mistaken, but it's still a problem. So did God maybe supernaturally, I don't know, curve that, say, okay,
Hmm.
siblings can now reproduce with each other for now, and then later on we can't. Like, what do you do with that problem?
Yes, you notice it isn't until much, much later that God forbid marrying close relatives.
Mm,
Um, so, for example, Abraham and Sarah, they were half brother
yeah,
and sister. You know,
it's true.
it wasn't until much later than that. Adam and Eve's children, they all inbred, um, and they didn't have any issues. So what you're actually getting at is actually a genetics problem, and this is actually a fascinating topic. You were asking about uh, good evidences for a young Earth. Well, here's a good
Yeah,
evidence for young life. According to the evolutionary timeline, the first ape-like creatures would have evolved like about 1 million years ago. Humans wouldn't have evolved until about 100,000 years ago. There is huge problems with that. We have genetic mutations. You and I are getting them. We all gain them in our lifetime. If I recall, it was about 120 on average uh, point mutations. Now it's 3.2 billion base pairs, uh,
yeah,
in the human DNA, but still, the problem is it adds up. So you collect 120 errors. You also inherited 120 errors from your dad. He inherited 120 errors from his dad, on so on and so on. So you we are rapidly accumulating so many genetic errors that the one evolutionary geneticist subtitled his paper, "Why Aren't We Dead 1,000 times over?"
mm,
Because the genetic mutation load is accumulating way, way, way too fast. Um, we could not. You can't move the clock back to even 100,000 years. We would be dead. because the accumulated genetic
Interesting.
load, in the current time, we would be dead right now, because
Yeah, we would.
we know the rate of accumulation. We've measured it. It's well documented.
Wow.
So on that note, Adam and Eve were perfect humans. They
Yeah.
had a perfect genetic code. There was no genetic errors. The reason we have problems with inbreeding now is because if you marry your sister, she's got the same genetic mutations you do,
Okay.
which those might be what do you call it? It hangs in the background. It doesn't come to prominence if one of the parents doesn't have that, then recessive. That's the word I was looking for.
There it is. Yeah. It's like, don't
The,
ask me.
yeah, yeah. So the mutation is recessive in one of the parents. Um, and so, but if both parents have the mutation, now you've got a problem. You're passing on the mutation to your children, and it can be fatal real fast.
Oh.
Darwin married his cousin, and several of their children, I think all of their children, died actually. I know
Wow.
more than one. My history is sketchy there. I've forgotten all the details. Boy, you're bringing out all kinds of stuff tonight that I've forgotten. It's like, man. Oh
Charismatic
well.
Cheetah podcast, man.
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
That I did. I really did. I never knew that. I didn't realize that. I mean, obviously, I knew about genetic mutations and that sort of thing, but I didn't realize that there were so many. It's kind of like taking a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, and if you got
Yep.
one little mistake on there, and it just multiplies and I didn't realize that we couldn't possibly we'd all be mutated to the point where we wouldn't survive out of the womb, or we wouldn't be able to
Yep.
reproduce or something. Like we would have been extinct a long time ago. I never knew that. I really never knew that. That's fascinating. Wow. See, the more you know, the more you learn. Uh,
One of my Crevo rants, actually one of the first Crevo rants I ever did. Um, I forget what I called it, but it was on that very topic. Genetic. What did I call that? Crevo rant.
this is why I record, so I can edit this out.
Ah, that's okay. You can leave it in if you want. The boat that don't float. Crevo rant number 78. So on my YouTube channel, Wazulu, WAZ. Do you say it's Z or Z?
Zed, I
Okay.
think. Zed, yeah, I think
Okay.
ZED.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Zed. Yeah, yeah.
So Wazulu is my old YouTube channel, WAZOOLOO. So if you go to youtube.com/Wazulu, you'll see all my Crevo rants there. And that one's Crevo rant number 78. Genetic entropy is what they call it. And that was written by a creation geneticist. It was excellent book. Man, it was well written. But anyway, I just give a quick lowdown, and it's exactly as you described. I use the example of digital copies from a DVD or a CD, and making copy after copy and getting errors, because the DNA reproduction is not binary; it's digital in nature.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
information. Yeah.
yeah, and it's you have a base pair after base pair. It's not a little bit of A and a little less of A. It's either A or B or T or C or G or whatever. Um, so anyway, so that was the better analogy, was to use a digital medium. So
Makes sense. Well, man, we're already at 15 minutes, which is crazy. But I guess
yes,
a question that a big question I've always had, is what about like carbon dating, and what are the other forms of dating? Let me see.
well, there's a ton of them, but that's the
Yeah,
most common one that people
yeah,
ask
carbon
about.
dating.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
let's take a look at carbon dating. So Um, for the better part, carbon-14 dating works. There is still some variations because there's a hidden assumption that the carbon dioxide ratios in the past were the same as they are today. There is a ton of evidence from the fossil record that would suggest very stark contrast against that statement, that it was radically different carbon dioxide levels in the past, and that throws the whole carbon-14 dating off. However, I've actually participated in both getting samples, providing samples, and for multiple people who have done studies where they took samples of fossils. And because most of the time when you get a fossil, it hasn't been replaced by rock. The
Right.
the organism is still there, but it's been permeated by rock and coated in rock. And so wood samples, again, in the Paluxy, I've collected wood samples out of the Paluxy. Dinosaur bones is another one. So
Didn't you
dinosaur
have some
bones,
dinosaur? Didn't you have some tissue not that long ago? Dinosaur tissue?
yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
That's ongoing research actually.
Wow,
I'm still blown away by that. That's
that's fascinating.
yeah. So that was a Triceratops horn and a Hadrosaur leg bone that I specifically bought to dissect. I have not carbon dated them yet. I may do that. We'll see. But the reason I got them to dissect was because there were so many reports of still preserved dinosaur meat in the
Wow.
bones. And in my case, the Triceratops horn, when I took it down to the brand spanking new lab there at Creation Evidence Museum, we thin sectioned my Triceratops horn and threw it under the microscope. We had problems with it. It came off the slide while we were sanding it down. But Clay just figured, oh, let's glue it back on, take a look. Maybe it's good enough. So we did,
Yeah.
and my jaw hit the floor. I was expecting and hoping to see bone cells, osteocytes. I was hoping to see that. I was
Yeah.
not expecting to see uh, blood.
That's crazy.
And
Yeah.
we found I have yet to cut into that fossil horn and not find blood. Every single cut I have taken in that thing, and this has led to all kinds of crazy research of stuff that I didn't know until I got into this. Um, it was by chance I was using a blacklight, UV flashlight, and blood clots fluoresce bright blue under UV light.
Okay.
And so here's another fascinating point. When I light that thing up, the whole Triceratops horn, and in fact, every single dinosaur bone so far that I've done with, it is absolutely filled with blood clots. Why blood clots? Well, it's a little known fact that even humans. Are you a lifeguard by chance?
No.
Okay. Ask a lifeguard. If you have a drowning victim who's been resuscitated, they will tell you to be very, very careful because even a small cut will kill them. The reason for this is because, however, I've actually got a paper I still haven't read that explains the biochemical processes, but the drowning event causes your blood to clot. So,
Interesting.
this is a further piece of evidence that I've got
So,
multiple videos just talking about the copious evidence that the dinosaurs were killed by drowning in a global scale flood. Um, and this is just one other piece of evidence that's just come out in the past year, that I'm still undergoing this research. I'm still conducting this research. I've got a bunch of homeschoolers involved now, doing this as well. But this is research you can do at home. You know, dinosaur bones aren't that hard to get.
yeah.
So
Yeah. So, I mean, and according to I guess the typical scientific model would say that the rock should have already replaced the bone. It's not actually, a fossil's not quote unquote actually a bone or a fossil. It's actually just rock that it turned into rock essentially. Or the atoms got switched out. So, but you're saying that not only is it not rock, it's got an outside layer of rock, but it's actually got blood and quote unquote dinosaur meat inside of it. That is absolutely insane to even think
And
about. Like,
and please note, it is also the evolutionists saying that,
wow.
not just
That's
me.
wow.
That's why I went
That's
looking.
crazy. That's well. So I interrupted you, but I just thought about the dinosaur tissue thing, and I was like, I got to ask him about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Oh, so
so
the carbon
carbon
14.
dating,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
I'll have to do it real quick because we gotta
ADHD, you
go.
know.
Um, the carbon 14 dating. Uh, my buddies and I, including the folks at the Creation Evidence Museum, we have all conducted hundreds of carbon 14 tests on wood fragments from dinosaur layers, wood fragments from deeper layers. I collected some from what we call the Carboniferous here in Canada, what you guys call the Pennsylvanian down in the US, allegedly 300 million years old. Crude oil, natural gas wells, all these things can be carbon dated. And with dinosaur bones in particular, it's very interesting because they always return in a carbon 14 age of between 5,000 and 50,000 years old.
No, really.
But they will tell you that those bones are 60 to 75 million years old. So
Interesting.
which age is correct? 5,000 years old, 50,000 years old, or 75 million years old? And what's even more interesting is several of the Neanderthal fossils, our ancient half ape, half human ancestors, allegedly,
Right. Yeah.
who
Yeah.
actually had larger brain cases than we do. So if you go by that, they were more intelligent than we were, not dumber. Neanderthal fossils have also been carbon dated, and in several cases, the Neanderthal man ages were older than the dinosaur carbon 14 ages.
Wow.
So you can do that whatever you want.
Yeah.
So
And they make it sound like it's so like this is the scientific, this is what the science community is saying, this is fact. They make it sound like it's so is like absolutely true. So that's crazy. Well, Ian, I know you got to run, man. So real quick, just what I don't know, what do you want to leave us off with? Like, what do you want to say? Here's what I want to ask you. What do you say to someone who in my early 20s, I struggled with my faith because science said one thing and the Bible and Christianity said a different thing. So honestly, I didn't realize I could ask these questions. I didn't know that I could investigate these. I didn't know there's so much evidence for creationism. But what would you say to the person who is either a new Christian and struggling with like, oh, my science professor and these books say this, and Neil deGrasse Tyson says this, but my Bible says this, and my church says this. What would you, or someone who's been a Christian for a long time and they're wrestling with these things? What would you say to that person who's struggling with their faith with this evidentiary issue? I guess.
um, I would say, first of all, do ask the questions. I think that's very healthy. That's very good. And do the research. You'll notice a lot of the things that I mentioned today is stuff you can do at home. I've got
Yeah.
homeschool kids doing this research. So it's not like you can't do it yourself. You can do this yourself, and you can go and see and handle the evidence for yourself. Those university professors, college professors, all those guys, they are giving their interpretations of the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I may even agree with them in many cases that, yeah, that's a possible interpretation. Sure. And then I also come up with an interpretation of the exact same evidence. And you'll notice that we have starkly contrasting interpretations. They are interpretations, not facts. The facts are, here's a fossil, there's your fact.
Yeah.
Now it's up to you to interpret it. And how do you know what the correct interpretation is? And just something you mentioned earlier, with regards to Noah's flood, I would also point out, what did Jesus believe? Because you'll notice there was theories of evolution around at the time of Christ. This is not a new theory.
Didn't know that.
And yet you'll notice Jesus didn't run around saying, oh, hey, if you want to find out about how we came to be, just go talk to the Greeks. They're onto something. No, he pointed to Moses. That's who he quoted. And he talked about Adam and Eve as literal people, the global flood as a literal global flood. In fact, he even related that to the end times judgment, which is going to come over all the world. Not a local flood,
true.
which was some of the world, but all the world. And that's from Jesus. So what would Jesus believe?
Amen. Well, thanks for coming on. Where can people can find you? Where can they find you if they want to check out? I know you mentioned your YouTube channel. I'll put the link in the description as well.
Okay. And rumble.com/user/Ian Juby as well is another one. That's probably the two best places. I've kind of got a hate on for YouTube lately.
Yeah, love hate for me.
Oh, so I'm trying to point people to Rumble, but that's my website. I haven't updated it. Needs help, and I just haven't had time to do anything with it. So I can't even point to that.
Well, thanks for taking time out of your. I know you're a busy man. I gotta have we've skimmed the surface of a lot of topics here in this really quick hour. Honestly, it's probably the quickest hour I've ever had recording any episodes, and that's pretty impressive because I've had some really cool guests on, talk about some cool stuff, so but I'd like to have you on again maybe in the future. Maybe we can dive into specifics like the flood only or dinosaurs only or something like that.
Sure.
So I'd like to have you on again, man. But thanks for coming on. And if you found this video edifying, or even you think we're both raging heretics and you think we suck and we need to be off the internet, please like this video, comment, tell me in the comments how much you hate me. It helps the algorithm. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and go check out Ian on his multiple platforms. So see you later.